Welcome back. Welcome back once again, family. Welcome back to the consciousness of Kush. I am your host, Jamun Ya'at Ra, also known as Kush. Now, as always, before we get into this, we want to go ahead and pay respects and we want to pay homage to our ancestors. So let's go ahead and pour a libation for that and take care of business. All right. Also, because I forgot to do this on my last first video, I want to pay respect to and give honor to the two people that brought me into this world, and that's my parents. So much love and respect to you, mom and pops. Now, the topic for discussion today, check this out. We're going to do something different. I want to tell you a story. Now, I may not be the best storyteller in the world, but I want to tell you an incomplete story that you can draw your own conclusion to in order to try to amplify the point that I want to make today. Story starts off like this. You have a young kid who is transitioning from middle school to high school. And this kid, once he gets to high school, immediately understands that it's something different because there are little cliques and little groups of people who hang together throughout this school. Now, because this kid is very perceptive, he knows that depending on which group he chooses to identify with or to align himself with could determine how his next 4 years of school could play out. So it's very important. So he looks at the so-called geeks. Now he knows that the geeks has high academia, but as far as their social status, their real estate is really kind of low. And he notices they get picked on a lot. Then he also takes a gander at the jocks. Well, he understands that the jocks, although their social status is pretty high, they're not very intelligent. So GPA would be a problem with aligning yourself with the jocks because pretty much all they do is train, and you know how the story goes. All right. This kid also notices little other groups, such as people that were extremely popular, but they associated themselves with things that wasn't very healthy, so to speak. So you got drugs, you got alcohol, and different things like that. So this kid has a decision to make when it comes to associating himself with a particular group of people. This is where you have the ability to reflect on this kid's position and see how you make these same decisions anytime you're introduced into a new atmosphere. The topic of my discussion today is culture. Why? If you listen to the radio, listen to the news, culture now is used as some type of a buzzword. As a matter of fact, I remember last year in 2019, when the BET Awards was coming on, they said, hey, come out and join the culture and this and that and this and that. And they kept using that word culture, 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 culture. Well, if you think about BET, BET stands for Black Entertainment Television. But the Black Entertainment Television is not owned anymore by black folks. So what type of culture are we really trying to promote? Are we using the word culture as a strategic way to market and to advertise? Are we using it as a cheap camera trick or some type of a hand is quicker than the eye type maneuver in order to psychologically seduce people into buying certain things or buying into certain ideas. I'll be honest with you. My definition of culture comes from somebody that I admire very, very much. His name is Dr. Amos Wilson. Dr. Amos Wilson, if you don't know anything about him, was a brilliant psychologist, wrote several books, and I highly recommend everybody check out his work. But culture, in its original inception, had to do with a set of practices, principles, beliefs, traditions, and customs. And it was very strategic because it was one way for one generation to pass on these things to another generation so that that younger generation would not have to go through the slip, trips, and falls that the older generation went through. So it was very logical for the culture to dictate how people would maneuver through life because it was somewhat like a shortcut. You wouldn't have to put or invest very much thought or very much attention into it because you already have a set path. Does that make sense? Now, if we want to stick to the original tradition of what culture really is, then we have to do away with a lot of this frivolous stuff. If we examine the black community right now and you take it for commercial value or the denigrated value that has been placed upon black folks, our culture looks like it's full of drug dealers, single moms, high crime, mental abuse, physical abuse, child abandonment, etc., 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 etc. And although a lot of that stuff is in the black community, it has not always been that way. And the reason it is that way is because we have gotten away from our original culture. Now, for me, culture has to do with 5 things. The 5 things that culture should resonate with you is number 1, identity. Number 2, purpose. Number 3, pride. Number 4, understanding. And number 5, direction. Now, if you see me looking off camera, I'm making sure I hit certain points because I have my notes here. All right. So just let you know. Why is identity important? Because before you can endeavor into any activity, any new venture, anything in life, you need to know who you are. You need to understand yourself in a way that you cannot be confused or tricked by outside influences. That's what helps you stay focused on what it is that you need to do simply because you know who you are. Now, identity obviously is going to be backed up by purpose. Because if you come from a certain group of people, then you already understand, based on the culture that these people have, what they stand for. So that's going to automatically give you your sense of identity. And it's automatically going to let you know what to strive for, which will give you your purpose. Because you've already seen and you already know what your people can do. Now, what's going to back up your purpose is going to be your pride. Your pride is going to back up your purpose because once you know who you are, you know what your purpose is. You're going to take pride in making sure that you maintain those two things, which is going to give you the number 4 thing. It's going to give you that direction. It's going to give you a clear path of what it is that it's going to take to accomplish that purpose. And the 5th and final thing is your understanding. Understanding is probably the most important of all of these things because that lets you know why. I tell my kids all the time, one of the most powerful words on the planet in my mind is the word why. Small word, powerful implications. Why? Because it forces you to question whatever it is that's going on, regardless of who's giving you the information, regardless of what you're seeing, regardless of whatever the case may be. When you ask that question, why causes you to put 2 and 2 together, which gives you the understanding you need to know why culture is important. If you have no identity, no purpose, no pride, no direction, and worst of all, no understanding, it is very easy for anyone to come in, rearrange your thought process, and have you do whatever it is that they would like for you to do. Make sense? So if you take the little boy, for example, who is transitioning from middle school to high school, and this little boy has no culture, whoever has the strongest impression on that young man, that's who he's going to follow. Or whoever he thinks he can identify with, that's who he's going to follow. It's very simple. However, if this boy comes from a culture that has these 5 things clearly laid out for him, he's only going to make a decision that's going to make himself feel prideful about what he's doing. And he knows that he's representing his people. So he's going to do something that's going to make them proud as well. You see, it works hand in hand. As so-called black folks or African Americans in this society, our culture is so convoluted that it's difficult for us to really understand which direction we should go in. And it's difficult for us to find our true identity in some of the endeavors that we partake in. You know, you want to be a successful businessman. You go into corporate America, you do really well, but you find you have to compromise some of your morals. How does that make you feel? You know you have aspirations in the music industry, but some of the lyrics that you have to sing or say, it don't quite line up with your spirituality. So what do? You see, we're always forced to make these type of decisions. And without a strong cultural background, we always end up going left instead of doing the things that is most appropriate and that will build our community, build our people. We, when it comes to identity, have been sold a bill of goods that we're all the same. And similarities are obvious, But being similar to something and being the same as something, we already know that that's two different things. So we have to understand what is most appropriate for us. And the only way to do that is to understand the culture in which you come from. Black people in America, we dismiss Africa. We dismiss our ethnic upbringings or our ethnic lineage. And we have adopted only a temporary physical location that we've been in for maybe, let's just say, the past few hundred years. So without acknowledging all of the information that we have available to us, we build our culture on such limited amount of information. You got to realize that science itself can genetically trace the black gene back 300,000 years. 300,000 years. Now that's just what they can trace genetically. So you mean to tell me we are willing to let go of 300,000 plus years and only focus on a few hundred? To me, that doesn't make sense, because you can actually see how that is progressing with us. A good way for you to measure your culture is to see what the demographic you fit in and how it is progressing. You can look at the progress of not just yourself, because you can't base it on independent evidence. You have to base it on a broad spectrum, meaning that you have to have a group. Because it's easy to maneuver one person through on a journey, whereas the challenge is maneuvering a group of people on that same journey. So what my point is how is the group that you belong to, how is the group as a whole progressing? If the group as a whole is continuously doing this number right here, hey, then we got a win situation. But if you see that your group is staying right here and you independently are doing this right here, then we still have a problem. And we have to rely on the old saying, am I my brother's keeper? Because what sense does it make if I can make it to the top by myself and I look around and I'm the only one there like me? Now, I know there's a lot of people that say, well, man, I got to get me, I got to do this, I got to do this, I got to do that, and you have a lot of the rap culture that says, hey, look, I got my jump, you get your weight up, and I done had to do this and I done had to do that. Ain't nobody never look out for me, so why should I look out for somebody else? Well, I mean, check this out. If you look at history, the only way that we have fallen was simply because we thought in individual terms. Look it up. But when you analyze the fact that when we work together as a team, we can accomplish so much more. There's so many parables. There's so many Psalms, so many proverbs that talk about the power of teamwork. Everybody knows that you need a team in order to move at an optimum pace, and in order to achieve optimum success. Nobody can do it on their own. No one. And there is no exception. So I invite you to reanalyze what we call culture I invite you to reanalyze how you position yourself in this world and how is that beneficial to the culture. Now, if we truly black out here and we truly understand the plight of the black man and the black woman, then there should be no problem with us looking at this thing and working with each other. I'm always going to end every single video that I do with the three things. Remember your ancestors, know thyself, and build your community. These are not three principles that I have come up with on my own. Our ancestors thought enough of us to leave these hints behind for us. So you understand they understood the power of culture and tried to get that same message to you. The only thing is that we have been disconnected from our culture, and I get it and I understand it. But we got to start somewhere, because what we're doing right now is not working. So, as always, know thyself, remember your ancestors, and build your community. Kush.